Welcome, Joe.
Hey,
Thank
mate.
you for joining us. Hello,
Thanks for having
hello.
me.
Awesome. You're co-founder at Adclear. Uh, why
Correct.
don't you tell people what Adclear is, what you guys do?
Sure. So, Adclear automates marketing compliance for fintechs. Essentially, it's a workflow tool. So, think sort of Airtable, Notion, Jira meets a Grammarly style agent specifically for marketing assets and outbound communications. So, right now, we work with the likes of Plum, Credit Spring, Trade Nation, Hatch, and all of their outbound communications, whether that be an Instagram post, a LinkedIn post, an email, product screens, website landing pages, because they're financially regulated, have to be checked against the relevant handbooks, ASA codes, etc. And AdClear basically automates those checks and allows marketing to publish faster and safer than before, or product, and compliance to have that safety net and system where they have a million and one things to do and they don't want to do manual repetitive reviews throughout. So it kind of cuts those feedback loops and then they can kind of approve or reject. Ideally just approve because it's gone through the AdClear washing machine.
Mm, yeah, I've been lucky enough to see a demo, and it is incredibly impressive, the level of precision you guys have as well in that automated review. It's very, very cool to see. I think it's a very cool application of AI in in like a real world use case. How did you guys think of that? Like, it's you know, it's a very like important need, but it's also like very much in the detail of like regulation. Like, how did it come about?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's sort of two, well, a few factors actually. So initially, I actually had a family member working in regulation, and I think we were just chatting about her role and what she does. Um, and working in venture capital, I kind of had seen generative AI being leveraged across startups. And I thought, you know what, we can automate a lot of these manual repetitive checks that you and your team does. So that kind of sparked the idea. And then my co-founders, Donnie, I'd known for too long. We say I've known since we were 6 or 7, and we sort of grew up together playing football and in the same area. And over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, we've been tinkering with ideas, a range of random stuff. But this one stuck, and Cam, our CTO and co-founder, I knew he'd always wanted to build and start something himself. I had that sort of hunger and desire. So he was the first person I thought of when building Adclear. So yeah, brought the team together. We launched a proof of concept with a regulator through that family member that kind of gave us our start, proved the technology worked, and then we went from there. We were kind of tinkering on the idea. There's clearly an application here, but where is the pain most felt? And highly regulated sectors, financial services to start off with, is where we got our foothold.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, it's nice when you see it, you see the problem in the real world, and then you've built for it. How long have you guys been going now?
So we officially launched that pilot and like were incorporated in March of last year, but we really only got going, I would say, in September, really, because it took
Wow.
us a few months to kind of tinker on what we wanted to do. And then
Yeah.
sort of August, September, we signed Plum,
Mm.
and then we raised pre-seed in October, November, and officially closed in December. So I'd say like running hard for the last 6, 7 months, and yeah, now kind of just scaling up ARR. Got a handful of really interesting growing fintechs, and just got to keep pushing it.
Wow, that's incredibly impressive. That's not that long. That's very
Feels not.
short.
It feels like so much has happened, like
Yeah.
when we first started out, we were all still kind of sort of full time in that sense, and then
Mm.
before you know it, you're kind of all quitting your job, jumping in full time, and so far, I absolutely love it. It's definitely a lot more stressful and ups and lows, highs and lows, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's been really good so far.
Yeah. What's stood out for you? What's been very like different compared to, you said you were in VC before, um, and I guess for you and yeah, your co-founders, like, and for anyone listening who, is thinking of maybe uh starting something themselves, like what are the like big differences in terms of like doing your own thing, co-founding your own
Mm.
startup and having that full-time job?
I think something that I was speaking to some other founders about this. Something that doesn't really get spoken about is like the impact on stuff outside of work, so your personal life, just life generally outside of the work arena. Because I think when you have a job in that sense, it's not necessarily 9 till 6, Monday to Friday, but maybe you're not thinking about it all the time, and you're not as obsessive as you kind of need to be as a founder. And my personality, and I think all of us share this, is that we enjoy being obsessive about something and being deep into something and like figuring out the pain points and whatnot, and working hard. But that comes at a cost, right? With kind of like your relationships, your own kind of mental well-being and stuff. And I think that doesn't really get spoken about too much. I think the biggest change for me is just like adjusting to that way of life, and the sacrifices that are actually not in the work arena, they're outside the work arena. So that's one thing. And then the second thing I think kind of tied to that, but different, is the sort of highs and lows are more, you feel them more, because I think when you sign a deal that you deliver value to a customer, you can see it, and you fundraise or whatever, your first team member joins. We're only a small team, there's 5 of us, but it's amazing when you see kind of someone gel and whatnot. But when these all these highs are great, and they're countered by the lows. So like you lose a deal, or the product isn't delivering something, or whatever. And I think what gets me through, I think the team also, but especially me, is that just the team I have around me. Like, I think if you can voice these concerns to your co-founders, you have that foundation of trust and transparency, and like you feel like you can chat to them like just very openly, then they pick you up when you're low, and vice versa. So they're probably the two things that are most profound for me in the like, first sort of 6 months.
Yeah. I think there's a really interesting point on the obsession and then the knock-on impact that that has. But I guess especially at your stage, like being so early, like setting everything up for the first first time and doing a great job at it. But yeah, that obsession is like very much necessary. Um, does it help that like you mentioned you knew Donny, one of your co-founders from from
Yeah.
back in the football league? Does it help with that kind of like foundation of trust and being able to have those like hard conversations?
Yeah, I think so. It definitely, I think, to be fair, something obviously as a VC you look at a lot is co-founder relationships and how the dynamics and how they work. But I didn't quite realize the importance until you start your own thing. But like, there's a reason why most startups fail, because of the co-founder split ups. And I think I could see that like with us, it absolutely helps that I've like Donny and Cam, I consider some like both to be my closest friends, but also now my co-founders, because I think we can have the relationship where like I can sense their moods, they can sense my moods, we can sense each other when we're a bit stressed, and even if it's just like, do you want a coffee, mate, or whatever, like these things are just to get us through. It really does help, to have open, honest conversations. And the number one thing I love so far, is just the kind of dynamics that we have and how we kind of work on things, together. We have like we call them quarterly therapy sessions, where we just like basically critique and like say the positives about one another in front with when we're all in person over like a coffee or a beer, or whatever. And it's quite nice. Like, I don't think you can kind of get that at potentially you might not get that at a normal workplace, because you're not working so closely and obsessed with the same thing.
Yeah, it's good that you structure that actually, and you don't kind of let it happen by chance. You make sure it happens at least every every
Yeah.
quarter. Yeah, no, that's super cool. It's always nice like speaking to new startups and understanding like what's behind it all. Like it's very cool to see how you guys started Adclear. If we step into talking about like the actual product and what you guys do, like um, what's kind of like a typical use case that Adclear solves for, and like what kind of pain points do you really like target to solve?
Mhm. Yeah, it's one of those important questions for us as a company. But with Adclear, there's basically two pain points we're solving for, and then a third one that kind of relates to it. But if we look at the marketing side, we know that speed to market, is really important, especially, for example, if you're a fast-growing fintech or a trading platform even, and you want to react to something Trump says, which this week could have been a million and one things. You want to react to something, you want to add, a newsletter or a social banner or whatever. You can't publish that on the same day, or it's very hard to publish that on the same day if 10 other people in your team also want to do this, and compliance have that's one part of their job. But they also have a million and one other things they need to be doing. So maybe the SLA period is 2 days, or even by the end of the day they'll get back to you. At that point, you've lost the opportunity. So it's speed to market and reducing that bottleneck for marketing teams. And then for compliance teams, because we're an extension of their existing process. So Adclear is trained on the base FCA models, but Secret Source is really um, sort of changing the rules to suit each individual client and to reflect their compliance team. So what we do for them essentially is the repetitive manual feedback they're giving. That's a quick win because now AdClear can give that to the marketing team in real time. So maybe the one or two reviews they were doing before, AdClear takes it off their plate. They don't need to do it anymore, and that basically frees them up. So it's a productivity time thing. And then the third one related to that is essentially a safety net. So they know that everything marketing are putting through and it comes to them has been through the proper checks, their internal checks. And in time, what we see are sort of spot checks of marketing assets. So now, because there's trust in the system, you can feel as a compliance officer or head of compliance that you trust your marketing team because they've been educated through this process because you're building rules on AdClear, that they can actually start self-publishing their own materials and you spot check in 1 in 10 or something. And basically what that means is you're transforming a manual repetitive process into an automated principle based sort of confidence approach where you trust in each other to do the right compliant creative stuff.
Yeah, that's very cool. And maybe one thing to zoom in on is, so you said your your AI model, it's not a generic AI model, it's trained on both the FCA regulation and on the company's own kind of specific rule set. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So we have a base level understanding of, COPs for investments, etc.,
yeah.
and the difference of ASA cap and BCAP codes and the relevant regs there. But
Hmm.
that's, as we know, and you've been dealing with it yourself as well. It's subjective. This stuff, like some things
Yeah.
pretty obvious. For example, you can't say we're going to guarantee you millions of pounds because of this investment option. These are obvious things, but when you're pushing the line, you're trying to be creative. It's naturally subjective. So a lot of companies will have their own internal interpretations, which is a reflection of their process. And so what AdClear does is basically just kind of enforces what they already agreed with and aligned on internally to automate those checks, and that's where we see the real value because um, it's all good having a 30-page Word doc on fin proms, but if you still have to ask the compliance team, what does this mean? Or how do I do this? Then you might not as well have written it. So that's kind of where Aglis sits, is kind of ingesting that and in an actionable way delivering the value to marketing, to product, to help them be creative but also compliant.
That's really interesting. And I think at the beginning you mentioned about speed and like being able to like react to things that are actually happening in the real world. I feel like even in B2B, like as a marketer, like I feel like even in B2B, speed and kind of jumping on like what's in people's minds at that moment is becoming even more important. Yeah, having a tool that enables you to do that makes a lot of sense, especially in a very very regulated industry
Yeah,
like fintech.
exactly. And I think like even with alongside the speed, as part of that is the workflow, right? Like
Right.
you can use Airtable, Notion, Jira, and emails and Slack. Often is kind of the existing process of some firms, and that's fine. But you're building a process around what tools exist, whereas AdClear is a workflow built around this specific flow, right? So that means you can have things like audit trails. It means you can have things like status tracks and filtering by what's live, what's not. That means you can start extracting policy documentation. So all these things that on a Jira and Airtable Notion and on Word doc you can't do, right? So we're trying to like combine all those workflow tools to make it a delightful experience too.
Do you notice that do any of your like customers say, oh, actually like suddenly the way we work has kind of shifted after using AdClear and um like you say, because you're bringing that whole workflow into that specific use case, like do you notice a shift in how people work?
Yeah, definitely. I think we see that some. like the sandbox environment of Adclear. So before you submit it to compliance, we see marketing kind of going back and forth with Adclear to get into a compliant state and then sending it. So it's not like, okay, I'm just gonna create this draft and submit it to compliance. And compliance, I know there's a few things wrong with it, but compliance is going to come back to me. I'm gonna have to change it again and then send it. It's like I can actually just go back and within real time make an edit. So we often see you upload V1, actually gives you some feedback. You take some, maybe, we try and everything we give to be actionable, but maybe 1 in 10 it isn't. So you don't need everything. But you take what Actly gives you, you make the changes yourself because you're still the creative person. We're not the creative tool. You make the changes yourself. You upload V2 and you're happy with it, Adclear's happy with it, and then you submit it. So we're seeing like real-time editing for compliance and also like brand guidelines and tone of voice, like other kind of areas this technology is applicable towards. So that's how we're seeing marketing teams change. And on compliance, it's kind of coming into Adclear and having a sort of to-do list of like, I trust Adclear's judgment. So now I can kind of see what Adclear's flagged. And there's actually not much beyond that. Maybe there's a couple of things, but like I'm very happy with this. And if Adclear is happy with it, then sort of I'm moving towards being happy with it. And that's where we get to self-approvals and the value kind of longer term.
That's very cool. And it kind of, I guess, takes a lot of burden off. Like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious. Yeah, once you're doing all of those checks and like you say, then people aren't shifting like the burden onto someone else because you've got this tool helping you out in the middle. That's very cool. If we zoom out a bit and kind of think 5, 10 years down the line, what are you and your co-founders kind of like envisaging for the very long term vision?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's quite a sort of well, I think we basically the vision and the end goal is to transform a manual, repetitive process into an automated, modern way of doing things. And what that essentially means is empowering marketing teams and product teams and outbound communication teams, anyone producing any content that hits the end consumer, to self-approve and not necessarily have to wait for compliance and legal bottlenecks. So that's for the FinProm piece. But as part of that, it's not just the automation and the checks, but actually, can we start building data around this process? For example, we know that at the end, this is an obvious example, but we know at the end of the tax year, we uploaded 20% more than we did, the previous year. So we're going to have to kind of maybe increase capacity at this during this month of the year, for example. So building the data around who's the kind of most active reviewer or the most creative marketer. These kind of things you can start doing because your process is all tracked on Adclear. And then as part of that, obviously, there's a sort of question of going deeper into the compliance stack around regulatory reporting. Let's say if you're all of your decision making is living on Adclear, then you can start extracting policy documentation, and so your rulebook as such changes every day, and you give that kind of you bring transparency to what compliance and legal see to marketing, and vice versa, because marketing want to be creative and maybe they can push back. And this tension that exists between the two departments, we really want to bridge. So it's sort of like it's one team. I don't know if you've seen the Peep Show when they talk about like sales and marketing. Project Zeus is how we see AdClear with compliance and marketing is like Project AdClear. So we wanted them to be one team and not have to kind of like butt heads all the time.
That's brilliant, and I love the reference to Peep Show. That's brilliant. Um, Joe, what's been a highlight for you in the last year? There's probably many, but what's one thing that stood out for you personally?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think just doing it. Like it sounds very basic, but just like taking the leap of faith in myself, in the team, and then seeing like deals close and things going well. I think there's a number of times where I felt, wow, this is really, we're really going somewhere with this and it's amazing. When you sign a new client or you onboard a fantastic new employee or something goes really well. So there's been a number of those moments, but I think the overall feeling is one of like, I'm glad I've taken this leap from, being fairly comfortable and kind of could have seen where that went, but I've always wanted to do this. So I feel very sort of fulfilled in that sense. So yeah, I think just taking the leap for me is probably the biggest highlight.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Um, do you have any advice that you'd give so far to someone else who is thinking of maybe taking the leap now?
Yeah, I mean, I would just do it. Like it sounds very, again, very, very basic. I think like if you are thinking about it and you've been thinking about it for a while, and you, for me, like knowing myself, I knew I was always going to do this. It's just a kind of matter of when. So I think if you don't even necessarily fully see the potential of what you're building, but you believe in yourself and the people you're building it with, then go for it because you'll find a route to success. But it's just about backing yourself. So yeah, I would do everything you can to find the right people and the right time to do it for you personally. And the idea or what you're building will change, but as long as you have um, some sort of focus and like I say, you stick at it and believe in yourself, you'll sort of make it work. So yeah, I would say just go for it.
Yeah, fair, fair. No, that's good advice. And what can we look
Might not be
forward
good
to?
advice to be fair. If someone said, you ruined my life.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I put that for Adclear. They definitely wouldn't like it.
It's advice. They can take it
Yeah,
on.
not financial advice. So
Oh man, maybe we should put this podcast.
yeah, yeah,
Do you
exactly.
do audio or not yet?
We do actually. So we
Oh, you
do
do.
like
Yeah,
audio, video,
yeah,
images, PDFs, any form of asset,
yeah.
basically.
We probably should have covered that a long time ago. What, 22 minutes in? But yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, no, but that's a good point. Yeah, that's very cool actually that you cover so many different formats. That's uh, yeah, that's not the expected kind of behavior. I
Mm.
was kind of expecting. Yeah, we definitely do like copy and images, but yeah, like putting a podcast through and checking it against guidelines and things is very very cool. Yeah,
Yeah, we've seen that. Like even, like the partner offers, maybe you list like we partner with XYZ and we have a list of partners and add clear flags, well, this partner isn't on that list. Are you sure it's a partner? These sorts of things.
yeah,
It's quite cool to see. I mean, I remember when we spoke, Mo, like you
yeah,
obviously have experienced this problem firsthand, so it might be useful to maybe mention that, like in terms of the pain you felt.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, people may not be aware, but because we provide the infrastructure to other fintechs, we need to be comfortable with some of their marketing material that goes out to their end customers. So, we're in a situation where we provide the savings account and our customer then goes and distributes it. We need to be comfortable that they're following BCOBs in the right way and they're talking about it in the right way, etc. So yeah, it for us actually, Adclear could potentially be a very, very interesting tool where suddenly we wouldn't be swamped with marketing material from dozens of customers all at the same time, but we'd be able to put them through a solution like AdClear. And like you say, then it's just the kind of maybe it's a spot check or maybe it's maybe we do check everything, but we already know that like a lot of the back and forth has been done uh, thanks to AdClear. Where um, yeah, it could be very very cool. I mean, like yeah, like I said earlier, I think the demo we had was amazing. And yeah, we'll see what happens. People have to like, follow, subscribe to
I
find out.
did maybe find actually using Adclear. Do the demo plus deliver.
No, but it definitely. I mean, I never even expected some like. I think it's such an interesting real world application of AI. Like you can chat with Claude or ChatGPT or whatever you like, but to see the way your team has brought AI into like a real world use case and put a workflow around it that's actually usable for the marketing and the compliance side, potentially even the design side, or whoever's involved in that kind of creative communication process, I think is really really cool. And personally, how I think AI needs to kind of be brought into the real world. Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I think that was a key focus for us was like AI is really cool and like I think tangible versus maybe some of the bubbles like crypto and Web3, but can you
yeah,
deliver it like clear customer value without even being an AI company?
yeah. I think I mentioned when we first spoke that I tried putting some of our reviews into. We use Claude at Griffin, I fed it B-cobs and I tried to put a bit of material in there, and it didn't quite do it. And I was comparing your demo to my attempt with Claude, and I was like, this is night and day. Like the level, like I say, the level of precision that that you guys could demonstrate with Adclear like really blew me away. That was
Mm.
very cool.
No,
Yeah,
that's great to hear. We do
yeah,
benchmark against like because we always think like you could use even like something like Perplexity, right? Like you could just go
right,
on ChatGPT search and find the source or whatever. You use Perplexity because the workflow and the way of search is much easier. It's about showing how to use generative AI rather than just like giving it to a user. So we do compare ourselves with a Claude, with a ChatGPT for a specific use case because
right.
yeah, you could just go to like you say, Claude, put some stuff in and see, but they'll get we know Claude will give you a million and one things, whereas
Yeah,
we have preset things, right? So we know what we're looking for, and it just makes it
yeah,
a lot more targeted. And but
yeah.
it's a really interesting thing to see, like your own using the same models essentially, but your own stitching together and workflows to kind of
Yeah,
be a lot better at what the end goal is for the user.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point. I find myself going on Perplexity, just like you say, yeah, because of the way it's delivered. Even though I know the underlying model is one of these five five models, yeah, the way it delivers search for me in a lot of situations is like 5x better than Google even or yeah, ChatGPT. And yeah, when I did this Claude example with the review, like it just gave me text back, or if it tried to highlight stuff on the image, like it wouldn't quite be in the right place, and it was like, well, it's just not good enough. But then when I saw the AdCloud demo, it was like, yeah, this is pinpointed to exactly where the text is or where the problem with the image is. It's very different. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's one of the key. Like I love when I see it on a live client site where like it's pinpointing 7 seconds in of like or like the corner exactly the disclaimer is of the image or it's highlighted the text like it's been really really like obvious about it. I really think it's when it's so actionable that the tangible
Right.
value is delivered.
Yeah. It's a very good point. Um, I'm really excited for you guys. I think you've got an incredible product, and I think a lot of us in the fintech world can benefit from it. And there's probably other industries. I'm sure there's many other regulated industries that maybe in the future. I don't know. Up to you guys. But
Yes,
yeah,
you figure that out.
one step at a time.
Yeah, yeah. Own kind of FCA, UK market, and then to be fair, we are live.
Yeah.
Road Nation, for example, in Australia, New Zealand, the Seychelles, Bahamas. So we're quite like multi-jurisdiction now because the
Right.
process of training the models to the base level is kind of you rinse and repeat sort of thing.
Right.
Some
Right.
regulations are harder than others. Like Australia, ASIC regulations are a lot more complicated than the Bahamas regulations, for example.
Right.
Interesting nuance. If you're a reg tech nerd like me now, we talk for days about
Did you imagine that when you were playing football with
it.
Donny?
I didn't think we'd get into reg tech. I've always been interested in politics and like government policy,
Yeah,
and Ronnie studied public policy at LSE, so in his
right.
master's. So there's always been like a
Yeah,
kind of outside sort of interest, but not working so deeply, going to FCA kind of open sprints and sandboxes and AI labs,
yeah.
these sort of things wasn't on my personal roadmap, but love it. It's like a new world for me, and that's
Yeah,
what I'm kind of
yeah.
exploring.
Obsession.
An obsession, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Super cool, super cool. Awesome, Joe. We'd love to have you back, and we'll let people know how Griffin and Adclear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, absolute pleasure to chat. And yeah, best of luck. Awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it likewise, and big fan of what you guys are doing at
Yeah.
Griffin.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Awesome.